Hi, my name is Sonya Slater, and I am here to talk about relationship with non-believers. Adam and Allie asked me to provide a little bit of background or information about this, maybe some advice about how to handle challenging conversations with people who are not fully on board with your plan and your desire to start a business or transition full-time to a business that you own from the corporate world, or to achieve a particular business goal. And so sometimes these folks make statements that are that don't feel very supportive, that feel like they question or diminish your value within the organization or the judgment that you have. So handling these can be very difficult and a little tricky. So with that being said, this advice is very, very general because I don't know anyone's specific situation or the context of the relationships that these conversations are happening in. So I'm trying to be very vague with these pieces of advice. So take what you can and leave what you don't need, and that's okay. Okay, so my first piece of advice is you have to ask yourself who this person is. Is this person important to achieving that goal? Or is it somebody who is just sort of peripheral in your life that you happen to bump into? Everybody has an opinion, but that doesn't mean that you have to take their advice. And not only that, you don't have to take their advice, but you don't have to spend time in trying to convince them that your idea is right. You know your idea is right. You know your idea will work. It may not work exactly the way that you think, but you know that you can figure it out. You get to be the champion of your own business. They don't have to be. It doesn't really matter if second cousin Earl doesn't understand how it is that you plan to get customers. Convincing him of the fact that you will be able to find customers and draw them in, and that they will pay you for whatever business service that you're offering, won't get you any closer to achieving your goal. So just let that one go. Just be polite and say goodbye and do what you need to do with Earl to get him to get out of the conversation with him. If it's somebody close to you, that's a little bit harder, and it takes some more takes additional nuance and negotiation in order to be able to manage those conversations well. First thing that I want to mention is that if somebody is saying something to you that you feel uncomfortable with or you're not sure about, you do not have to answer them right away. If they're saying something upsetting, you can take time to yourself to think of a thoughtful response to them, because you don't want to just react out of emotion or out of defensiveness, because that doesn't help either of you. It doesn't move that conversation further in any way. So the second piece of advice is ask yourself, am I taking what they're saying personally? Because starting out in a new business or a new goal, there's a lot of self-doubt. We're unsure, is this going to work? Will I be able to make this? That combined with the many failures that come from trying something new. We mess up repeatedly over and over again, different mistakes, and we keep trying it in different ways until we get it right. So because of that, it takes a toll on our self-confidence. So then when people ask us a question and we already have self-doubt, that just amplifies that feeling of self-doubt. So you have to determine how much of this is me and how much of this is them. If part of it's them, then that's theirs. That's for the two of you to deal with. If it's yours, try to take that out of the equation. Try to look at it objectively and say, okay, if I didn't feel this way, are they really trying to take me down and cut me off at the knees? Or is it that I'm just I'm worried about failing, and I'm worried about this not working out. I'm worried about being able to pay my bills, and this isn't happening as quickly as I want it to. Then own it. Know that that's your worry, that isn't part of what they're trying to say to you necessarily. Maybe, but it may not be as well. So the third piece is asking yourself, what's their motivation? What is it that they're trying to accomplish with this question? What is this information they want to know? Are they really asking a question, or are they trying to tell me something? Or are they trying to elicit a change in me and influence me in one direction or another? Or is it that they're trying to express something to me, like a concern or a fear that they're having? It's important to know what it is that they're asking of you, so that you can give them what it is that they're asking for, or at least respond in a way to what they're asking for more directly. I also want to mention here that your job is to seek first to understand, then to come back and be understood. So you have to understand what they're coming from. So there are some questions you can use to ask to figure this out if it's not abundantly clear when you're having the conversation, which it probably isn't, because people are notoriously horrible at asking for what they want. The first is, what do you mean? Can you tell me more about that? Why do you ask? What are your thoughts on that? Not because you really want advice, but because you want to hear how they're thinking and what led up to this question for them, because that will tell you what their motivation is and give you some insight into how to approach that conversation with them and what you really need to be addressing there. It could be that they're asking you to change your hours at work. It could be that they're asking, all right, I'm scared, can you reassure me that we're going to be able to pay our bills? They could be asking, hey, I'm trying to budget. I need the number to plug into the budget to know exactly how much money we're going to be having if we're going to be able to cover bills and what we need to cut. So you have to know what that motivation is before you're able to accurately respond to what it is that they want to know. The other piece of this around motivation is it could be that your behavior is not in line with their values. So if that's the case, that's okay. Your behavior needs to be aligned with your values. If they feel that uncomfortable with your behavior because their values are different, then they probably should shut their eyes. No, I'm just kidding. They should probably not pay attention so much into what's going on in your world and take that on as their own, because it's not their behavior, it's your behavior. You're happiest when your choices, your decisions, the way you spend your time, the way you organize your life is in line with what you value most. To change that because somebody else thinks you should is negating the piece of yourself that is destined to create a happy life for yourself. So that's not a healthy direction to take the conversation or do anything about. It's even okay to say, oh, Mom, I know you value that. I know that that's important to you. What's important to me is this. You just highlight that difference. You acknowledge that their values are different than yours. The other part that I want to talk about here is that these conversations may be a series of conversation. It's not going to, most oftentimes if it's a close relationship, it's not a one and done. It's have a conversation, then everybody goes away and processes it, and come back and have another conversation and go away and process. It's okay. These can take weeks, months, years, because people change, develop, and grow over time. That these conversations will take on like slightly different perspectives to them. If the same conversation does keep coming up, I'd go back to that motivation piece and say, okay, maybe I haven't adequately addressed what it is that's really motivating this behavior. What other questions do I need to have? What other insight do I need in order to more effectively address this for this person to put this to bed? Because I'm tired of hearing about it. No, just kidding. Or maybe you are, I don't know. And the next part, number 4, is what legitimate concern might they be expressing? So it could be that they're trying to give you advice that you haven't thought about. It might be helpful for you, especially if they are from a very different walk of life or a different age. They may have been born into a different experience, a different zeitgeist, and would be able to provide you with some wisdom based on that unique perspective that they have that you can then use later to make things even better for your organization or business that you're building. So that could be a good thing. The other thing about legitimate concerns is they may be expressing a concern around a role shift or a change that needs to be made or has been made in the relationship that they're uncomfortable with, they don't like, they're angry about, they feel abandoned. So there's a lot of stuff that comes up in that. We're a web, and the people close to us, when we make changes and we shift things, it shakes the branch and it shakes their world too a little bit. So they're going to feel the change that you've made in your life, and they may be giving you feedback about that. Listen to it. It's important to hear that, especially if this is somebody you care about and love. It's important to hear how this is changing their world so that you can continue to stay connected with them, because when there's big shifts or changes, it's easy to grow apart. Listening to their concerns in whatever form they come to you, whether it's out of anger, that's okay. Just try to block out the feeling, the emotion, try to keep from being overwhelmed, and try to hear what's at the heart of what it is they're trying to tell you. The last part is boundaries. Boundaries. Talk about boundaries all the time because they're so important, and people notoriously have horrible boundaries with people. They let people into their lives they shouldn't, and that leads to really unhealthy relationships and really unhealthy ways of relating to other people. Part of this may be, is somebody asking you something that's inappropriate, that they shouldn't? Is this out of context for the kind of relationship that you have? I see this most often with parents asking questions and getting involved and intervening in situations where they really probably shouldn't be. So I think what this comes from is that when you're a parent, you're used to being involved in your kid's life. You're used to knowing everything that goes on in their life. Anybody who has little kids understands exactly what this is. You know everything about them. You know what they ate that day. You know if they went to the bathroom. You know if they showered, if they brushed their teeth, because you're so intimately involved with them. As teens, you're still involved in their life, and you're keeping tabs on them, and you know what's going on with them and who their friends are and where they're going and where they work. But once you go to college, that shifts slightly, and then you go into this no man's land of boundaries where you're slightly more bounded with your parent because you can make decisions more independently. You can decide to have brownies for breakfast or to go out all night or to sleep over at your boyfriend's house, which they would never let you do. I never did that. And so it feels nice to have those sorts of abilities and decisions, and it's easy to forget that parents still feel like they have an input on it. Which can cause conflict in that relationship as well. There are times when I hear people say, well, I can't do that because my parents would get mad. And I'd say, well, what does it matter if your parents are mad? Well, then they won't pay for my tuition. They won't pay for my rent. Chances are that's not entirely true. You'd have to do something pretty terrible in order for a parent to yank that stuff away from their kid. But it is legitimately possible, and I've seen it happen before. So that can be a legitimate concern. So then it turns into this game that you play. I know what you want me to say, and I'm going to say that, but I'm not going to invite you into my life. There are times when, once they leave college, this sort of pattern continues, even when the person is no longer financially dependent on that individual, and they fear the consequence that my parent will withdraw their love. Oh, that's not healthy at all, at all. Will I say there's such a thing as pure unconditional love? I would probably say no, but it can get pretty close to that. Chances are your fears of what will be taken away if you set a boundary are probably not exactly what would happen if you did. You have more power in that relationship than you think. So if it's with a spouse, a friend, more likely, or a parent is where I see boundaries come in, is with friends and parents. Then it's important to set those. You can't expect them to honor your boundaries. It's your job to set where those boundaries are and to reinforce them to make sure that they don't get trespassed and crossed. There are times that are very clear. I just want to throw these out there because I see these all the time, both in the work that I do, but also in talking with professors, talking with people in the business world and what they've seen. These are signs that your relationship with your parent is unhealthy and may be enmeshed, and immediate action should be taken in order to remedy this. If a parent calls your employer and asks you why you were reprimanded on something, if your parent calls your professor and asks about a grade, if your parent drives you or takes you for emotional support to a job interview, or comes with you to negotiate a contract for your business, it's different if you have a father that's a real estate attorney and they are showing up at the signing of a lease. That obviously that makes sense. But if your father's a dentist and that's happening, why is he there? Does he need to be there? Does he need to be part of the negotiation? If you have a parent that's really intrusive in your life like that, providing them with less information is probably a better scenario. They might feel hurt by that, but it's your job to reinforce those boundaries so that you're healthy. That's not a healthy environment and will take its toll in the long run. So I tried to just provide a plethora of a lot of different directions of advice on that, so I hope you found something in there that you might be able to use if these conversations come up for you. Good luck.